Shore right now from Boca Raton, I should say, to Deerfield Beach, all the way into Pompano Beach. Look at this. Some lightning indicated on our Doppler radar, so that's indicating you're hearing the rumbles of thunder if you're living in these areas anywhere from the coast, from Dania Beach, Hollywood Beach, all the way up towards Boca Raton. Little break from the rain by Surfside, but more rain's expected by 5th Street in a matter of minutes. More rain over Kendall and towards parts of Kendall Lakes, the Turnpike, and Pinecrest. Going to the Keys, you're finally seeing some of those showers by the Middle Keys, even down towards Key West. So I am anticipating more rain, at least for the next 30 minutes or so. Otherwise, we're noticing big landfall near parts of Mexico, but it is doing devastating flash flooding concerns. Also, we're noticing that tropical storm force winds are affecting this area, so there's a tropical storm warning in effect. The system is slowly crawling to the southeast at 3 miles per hour, winds at 60 miles per hour. All more in our local forecast coming up in just a bit, because it's a wet one. Alexis, is that rain affecting?
Take a look at a wreck that's happening in Broward County you want to be cautious of if you're heading out, especially if I-75 is in your commute. If you're heading southbound, just before Royal Palm Boulevard, there are 3 right lanes that are currently blocked, so you want to be mindful of that. That's if you're heading south.
To a peaceful protest in Fort Lauderdale spiraling into chaos when officers begin clearing the crowds. A woman left bloodied in the process as fellow demonstrators rushed to her aid.
All this happening at the same time protests where cell phone video captured another woman being shoved by a Fort Lauderdale police officer. Now this morning, we're learning new details about that officer's past.
Let's get straight over to Local 10's Sanella Sabovic. She's live in Fort Lauderdale. Sanella.
Good morning, JC and Eric. These 2 women were here in Fort Lauderdale Sunday afternoon demonstrating against police brutality. When they say they were victims of it, one of the women had to be taken to the hospital where she received 20 stitches.
You got in the head!
Latoya Ratliff is seen bleeding from her head as people are trying to help her, leading her out of the way. She was struck by a projectile she believes was a foam baton. This casing was found nearby on the ground. And this is how her face looks like now, swollen with a bruised eye and a skull fracture.
I have 20 stitches. Luckily, the CT scan revealed.
Peacefully protesting, but by nightfall, she says some people started getting agitated. Police then firing tear gas.
I was choking and I was vomiting, and a woman approached me and asked me if I need aid.
And as Ratliff was walking away to her car, she got hurt.
I didn't realize I was shot until I hit the ground and there was blood all over the ground. I could have actually not come home. And it's kind of strange to me that if we're peacefully protesting about police brutality, if you guys are meeting us with brutality, then are you sending the message that what you're doing is okay and nothing's going to change?
This was the same protest where cell phone video captured this 19-year-old woman kneeling, then shoved by Fort Lauderdale police officer Stephen Poherence, who has since been suspended without pay. The woman's mom says she was there and witnessed it.
He needs to be off of the force, period.
And we did get our hands on Officer Poherence's internal affairs files. There are at least 71 cases of use of force, 51 times where he drew his weapon. But once those investigations were concluded, he was found not to be in violation of department policy. We are also still sifting through his internal affairs, more cases here, also his personnel file. We did see a life-saving.
Michael Ruback posted a comment about the video showing George Floyd's death. He says, quote, "He wasn't killed, he's talking, which means he's breathing. He died because of drugs." As for Deputy Ron Thurston, he posted about a lack of minority investigators within the agency. Thurston's attorney believes the reassignment was in retaliation by Sheriff Gregory Toney.
The initial thought of those who know him and those who know of the situation believes that this may be politically motivated. It is well known that he has been campaigning on his own time.
Over the death of George Floyd.
Miami seeing its 4th day of demonstrations yesterday.
The protest, mostly peaceful, I should say. People even clearing out of the area before curfew. We have Local 10's Syra Anwar. She's picking up our live team coverage in Miami with more of their message.
So, JC and Eric, the last few mornings I've reported from protest sites like the Torch of Freedom and the Torch of Friendship, rather, and the Freedom Tower, all downtown sites. But the latest protest actually happened here, a different location noted for its symbolism. Days 1 through 3 of Miami protests, focusing on the high traffic, high visibility parts of downtown. But day 4's route concentrating on symbolism. Tuesday, demonstrators marching around Miami-Dade's pretrial detention center, the state attorney's office, and the Richard E. Gerstein Justice Building.
The problem is not just race, the problem is abuse of power.
Loud and passionate in speaking out about police brutality. Day 4 in Miami avoided the violence and vandalism we saw at the end of day 1.
Share a heart for, the truth in America, for real justice in America.
Protesters taking a knee in a show of unity.
Then we're going to show you in the polls, through the pen, and through our pocket.
Our rage is going to be justified. Our anger is going to be justified.
And this morning I did reach out to the state attorney's office to see if she wanted to weigh in on this choice of protest location. It's still early, so they haven't gotten back to me yet, but as soon as they do, I'll let you know what they say. As far as curfews, county leaders, as well as the leader of the county police, says that they are advocating for maintaining that 9 p.m. curfew for protest reasons throughout the weekend. We're live in Miami this morning. Syra Onward, Local 10 News.
We have new details this morning after a Sarasota officer was seen on video kneeling on a suspect's neck. This cell phone video captures the moment that officer arrests 27-year-old Patrick Carroll. Carroll was wanted for a domestic violence incident, this arrest happening last month. The officer seen holding Carroll down while his knee is placed directly on his neck. Carroll, who reportedly suffers from asthma and scoliosis, is heard screaming at the officer that he's having trouble breathing.
While they're saying I was resisting, I'm just moving around so I can have circulation in my body and my throat.
Utilizing your knee on someone's neck is not something that we train. It's not something that we authorize, and it's not something that we stand behind.
That incident is now under investigation. The officer was placed on administrative leave. Officials have not yet said if that officer has any previous complaints against him.
Looters targeting a car dealership in California, taking nearly $2.7 million worth of vehicles.
Damn, they're stealing all the cars. Damn, they're stealing all the cars. Hey, damn! Hey, get out of the way, get out of the way!
The owner says it all began when the vandals found the key safe. Vehicles blocking access to the driveway. The owner says they have recovered 20 vehicles out of the 70 plus that were stolen. Now they've hired more security to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Armed man is dead after a police-involved shooting in New York. New York City police responding to a call on Tuesday night of a man who was shot. Officers arrived, found the suspect hiding behind a tree with a gun in his hands. Officers say he refused to drop the weapon, and that is when he was shot and killed. The man the suspect had shot was taken to the hospital and is stable. And while that shooting was not connected to the protest there was a heavy police presence in the area, and as curfew took effect, officers were seen confronting members of the media who are trying to explain they are considered to be essential workers.
We're out here documenting this. You can't tell us to go home. We can't tell us supervisors. We can't tell you right? Essential to who? Who are you essential to? Who are you essential to?
We're told it was two journalists with the Associated Press, and they say that they were shoved and pinned by police before leaving. The journalists say they were wearing AP identification and identified themselves as media. Other videos capturing confrontations between protesters and police. At least one protester pushed up against the wall, although it is unclear why. Some crowds defying curfews, looters breaking into a pizza and wine store in Manhattan. We're told about 200 people were arrested last night. The day before, police made 700 arrests there.
In Washington state, protesters clashing with police outside Capitol Hill in Seattle. Those at the front of the crowd opening up their umbrellas to shield themselves and others from tear gas. We're told one officer grabbed a protester's umbrella at one point. And now in California, look at this group of protesters. They got creative to make their voices heard and get their message through. They climbed onto the roof of a building in Hollywood, spelling out BLM with their bodies, which of course stands for Black Lives Matter. New this morning, the Associated Press is now reporting that at least 9,300 people have been arrested in protests all across our country since George Floyd was killed. Now, the criminal conduct includes throwing rocks and bottles at officers, also refusing to clear the streets when they're ordered to do so. And police scanner apps are Floyd's death. That investigation will look back at the department's practices for the past decade. Governor Tim Walz says that this effort is only one of many steps to come to stop systemic discrimination towards minority communities.
Floyd's own family turning their pain into purpose, joining tens of thousands of protesters in his hometown of Houston yesterday, pleading for peace. The attorney expects 3 other officers involved in Floyd's death to be charged before Floyd is laid to rest next week.
What do you want people to know?
Kind of I miss him.
Overnight, George Floyd's 6-year-old daughter.
The first time we're also hearing Floyd's 6-year-old daughter, Gianna, and her mother talking about how that little girl discovered that her father had died.
She's like, I hear them saying my daddy's name. And I told her, she doesn't know what happened. I told her that her dad died because he couldn't breathe.
Roxy Washington telling Good Morning America she initially doubted whether to tell her daughter Gianna how her father died. She said she told the 6-year-old her grandmother, who had also died recently, came to take her father, and now they are both in heaven. Former boxer Floyd Mayweather will be paying for those services that are set for next Tuesday. The Floyd family attorney said Joe Biden is expected to attend. Former President Obama is going to address the recent protests later on today. He'll participate in the My Brother's Keeper Alliance, a town hall series along with talking about police reform activities and public figures. Obama's first on-camera comments since Floyd died. The town hall will be streamed live on obama.org beginning at 5 o'clock this evening.
Back in Washington, President Trump made another controversial visit to a church for the second day in a row. Here he is with the First Lady stopping by the John Paul II National Shrine in D.C. On Monday, the president posed with a Bible right outside St. John's Episcopal Church after peaceful protesters were violently cleared out of the area with tear gas, flashbangs, and rubber bullets, a move the Trump administration now says was ordered by Attorney General William Barr. And protests in the nation's capital continued last night, both outside the White House and outside Lafayette Square Park. That's where a new black chain-link fence was built so the president could walk through that area safely over to St. John's Church. Demonstrators in the area chanting phrases like peaceful protest and hands up, don't shoot. The ongoing demonstrations prompting the National Guard to line the Lincoln Memorial. Dozens of heavily armed forces were mounted on the steps to keep crowds at bay and protect the landmark from any possible vandals. More than 20,000 National Guard members have been called into 29 states to deal with possible unrest. Our D.C. Bureau Chief Ross Colombo will have much more out of Washington coming up in our next half hour of news.
Carolina going viral. 3 generations of black men caught on camera arguing about the right way to make their voices heard in the face of racial injustice. Here's a part of that exchange.
So what I need y'all to do right now at 16 is come up with a better way. Because how we doing it ain't working.
So this video shows 31-year-old Curtis Hayes passionately pleading with a teenager. Hayes had just argued with an older man about looting during a protest on Saturday before turning his attention to that teen, Raymond Curry.
I'm at home every day seeing this video go viral and just keep repeating in my head, how can I find a better way? How can I, at 16, so young, change the world perspective on my skin tone?
Curry said he's yet to find the answer to that, but is now working with Hayes to make a real difference.
Well, still ahead this morning, South Florida sounding off, demanding justice and change.
The protests and powerful show of solidarity in Sunrise. That's coming up at 9:30.
And a warning from COVID-19 experts about the summer heat. Could it kill the coronavirus?
J.C. Birch and Eric Yatsi.